Lucero, and I am sitting here today with Debra Lucero, and she is a businesswoman, consultant, philanthropist extraordinaire. She's a woman who wears many hats. And today we're just gonna hang out, have a little chat, and get to know her, how she is, where she is, who she is, and what her plans are and how she's impacting our local community, and helping everyone out.
All right.
So thank you for joining us, Debra.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We're very happy you're here. I've heard many great things about you, and I'm super excited to get to know you a little bit better.
All right. Well, thank you.
So first of all, if you wouldn't mind just kind of explaining, who you are, what you do. I know I kind of threw a lot of titles out there.
Well, so I was actually born here in Chico at Inlow Hospital, just a few blocks away. And my family has long-time roots here. My mother's family goes clear back to 1860 over in Oroville.
Oh, wow.
My parents met at Chico State and got married there. I went to Chico State. I was a journalist for 8 years, and then I also worked for a Hispanic lobbyist group in Washington, D.C. And then when I wanted to really start my family, Chico's just a hard place to not want to come back to start a family. It's a beautiful area, and I love the North State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that you said you're involved in a lot of other stuff. Of course, you have that business side.
Yes.
And then you're involved in other types of organizations. What's the passion that drives you for those? Where does that stem from, where you choose to put your time in those specific organizations?
Well, I'm very motivated by women's issues. So, I'm a member of AAUW. There's a PEO, which is an international education group for women. I am also a member of the League of Women Voters. So I try to involve myself in things that help women. I really believe that currently in our country, we're facing a crisis of a lack of women in leadership. With less than 25% of all offices held by women. And we represent 50% of the population. And we have a lot of men making decisions that affect us very personally, everything from our reproductive rights to our voting rights. And so it's time for women to step up. And I want to mentor the next generation of women because we need them desperately.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure through all of those organizations that you're involved in, and I'm going to assume that you have met a lot of women with the same interests, passions, drive as you. Is there any story that you could share with me from maybe a conference or a meeting or a moment that kind of resonates with you, or that you remember that kind of stands out as, I don't necessarily want to say an aha moment, but this is right or this is awesome?
Well, I belong to several other things that I didn't mention, but one of them is the Women's Fund in Reading, which is such an awesome organization. And it's a fund that helps women, young girls, do things that they're not able to do on their own. And one of the programs that we support is dentistry. And the fact is that when people are missing teeth, they don't go for job interviews. And so this organization took on, I think it was 7 women. They worked with local dentists up there to reconstruct the women's teeth in the front. And it was amazing, the self-esteem that the women witnessed for themselves, and the fact that they could go out and interview for a job. The whole thing was an amazing just testimony to me that something we may take for granted. You have a beautiful smile, and you maybe take these things for granted, but not everybody can.
Yeah.
And it saddens me that in America we don't have access to healthcare and dentistry and some of the things that should be, I think, not just something if you're rich enough to have it, but it should be a right.
Yeah.
We should have access to those things, and many people don't.
And like you just said, I'm sure I kind of take that for granted. I've never truly thought about that. But wow, what a really awesome thing to give someone or to help. It's not just the teeth, it's the confidence, that self-confidence to go out there and smile. Even have your smile.
Right.
That you know, for job interviews or...
And just think about our society. We're so hooked to our telephones, right? And, you know, I've heard there's this new thing called selfie something or other where you're so self-absorbed, you know, always taking photographs of yourself. But these women would never take photographs because they didn't like the way they looked. They didn't look in the mirrors, you know. So you know, that's a simple thing, and yet it's not so simple because it just points to a larger societal problem that we're experiencing, and that is how long will we go as a society in the wealthiest nation on the planet and not give people basic care?
Yeah.
These are things that your generation is going to have to tackle too, you know. Hopefully my generation will do something, but we need more women there in order to do it.
Definitely.
And a funny story is that in the last, I think it was the last two to 3 years, when we had a woman candidate running for president, there is a list called Emily's List. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it started about 30 years ago, and it was to encourage women to run for office. And Emily stands for Early Money is Like Yeast, okay? And that means that when you get money behind a candidate early, it gives them more opportunity to win that race. So when our current president won the race, prior to that, only 900 women had signed up in the last 2 or 3 years for Emily's List. I'm happy to report that there are about now 30,000 women that have signed up with Emily's List to learn how to run, whether it's for school board, city council, supervisor in different, you know, counties. So there is something that's awakening, and they're beginning to realize that we can't just sit on the sidelines. But getting involved is work. You know, it's work. It is community organizing. It's helping people recognize their own power and how to organize their neighborhood. If they want speed bumps in their neighborhood, one person is not a loud enough voice, but you get your neighbors together and you build a coalition, and then you go and ask for that speed bump. You know, that's just a very simple, you know, example, but you know, that's really how it's done. You got to get more than one person involved.
Yeah. So you said it went from just 900 to thousands?
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands of women who found this
Emily's List.
Emily's List is what it is. And got more involved with it. And do you think that there was a driving force behind that, or some sort of awakening or moment, or?
I think women are just awakened to the fact that, especially some older women who remember a time when women could not get an abortion, and so they remember that time, or could not even get birth control, and they don't want their daughters or their granddaughters to go back to that kind of thing. Not in America. It shouldn't be anywhere in the world, but not in America.
Speaking of running for councils, and what a little birdie told me that you might be getting involved with something like that. Would you like to share?
Well, I did throw my hat in the ring for county supervisor in District 2, which represents most of downtown Chico, West Chico, West Butte County, which includes the Green Line, which I'm not sure if you know what the Green Line is, but it's actually an agricultural line that was set up in the mid-'80s that said, this is rich agricultural land. We don't want to put housing on this land. So part of what we have been trying to save over the last 30 years is making sure that housing stays in areas where it makes sense. We need more affordable housing. The district goes all the way north to the northern border to Tehama County, but it includes Enloe Hospital, Chico State, the airport, all the new housing north of Chico, and a lot of people don't even really realize what districts are and what district they're even in. And I think that's too bad, because the Board of Supervisors has a great deal of influence over every person's life in a county. They have over a $500 million budget, and about 51% of that budget goes toward mental health, behavioral health, public assistance, Department of Employment Services. So these are things where we're experiencing extreme issues right now with homelessness, affordable housing, all of the things that are just buzzwords in our society right now. And I think that all politics are local, and we need to start very locally. And the Board of Supervisors is one of those places. So that's why I'm running. I feel that we need more government-based solutions, but we absolutely need more creativity and innovation, and we need different thinking, and we need people that look different from the people that are now elected, and we need more women.
Yeah.
I can't say that enough.
I agree with you. I'm definitely on your side there.
Yeah.
But wow, that's awesome. What, so you said it's county supervisor
Yes.
is the title. What is the main role or?
So the main role of a supervisor is really to watch over the budget of a county. So 71 or 79% of the budget is state mandated programs, okay? So a lot of people say, well, what can you do if these are state mandated programs? How can you really make a difference? Or you know, it's not like you're just sitting up there, boom, okay, there you go, boom, there you go. That's not really how it works. How it works is you have a staff. I think there are over 4,000 people that work for the County of Butte. And it really comes down to the people that are working those programs and how those programs are implemented. And I would just like to see more innovation. I would like to see more collaboration with local jurisdictions. I'd like to see more collaboration between the City of Chico and the county. I'd like to see more good fit grants at the state and federal level to bring in grants into our local community. I've been doing that for 20 years in the arts and culture realm, and it's quite possible in everything from transportation, which I think we desperately need to look at some different transportation needs here, particularly in District 2, but also with affordable housing. There are grants out there, federal grants, state grants, that we could be taking advantage of, and we aren't, and we need to. So I'd like to have a little more oversight on that, and the only way to do it is to be on the board.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I definitely wish you luck in that. And
Thank you.
You got my vote.
Do you live in District 2?
I guess I'm going to have to find that out now.
Well, yeah, we won't tell everybody where you live, but yeah.
But no, now that, I mean, I think that it's important to be aware of that type of stuff. And,
Yeah.
you know, how you just kind of broke that down, that everything, you know, there are people behind these decisions, and it does affect all of our lives.
Yes,
And
definitely.
a lot of people don't realize that exactly. Or,
No.
you know, the issues, how you say, how you were mentioning there's a clog in the system.
Yes.
And being able to recognize that and notice that and figure out ways
Yeah.
to make those connections.
Right.
And
Yeah, and it's hard because you're going across different jurisdictions. You know,
Yeah.
the problem might be in the city, but then you may need a state agency to help with that, or you may even need a federal agency to help, or you may need another county agency. You know, something that I think falls into that category is the whole cannabis issue. You know, that is a huge issue, and the state has put it upon all the jurisdictions to come up with their own rules, which makes for a very chaotic implementation of something as important as regulating cannabis, which desperately needs to be regulated.
Yeah.
So it puts the burden on each jurisdiction. And what that means is the minute you step out of Chico and you're in Butte County, then there's a different set of rules. And the minute you step out of Butte County and you're in Oroville, there's another set of rules. So that puts a hardship on our law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I don't think it makes sense. So I would work very diligently on looking at a more regional approach to this and other issues. Fire safety is another issue. You know, in Butte County, the reason why people want to live here is it's so beautiful, and a lot of them want to live up in the hills and in different places where it's more and more difficult to keep people safe from fire, especially with climate change. And we've seen that this year in California.
Yes.
So there's all of these issues are right here in Butte County, and we just have to understand how they're interrelated, and we have to have people willing to go that extra yard and look at creative solutions, which I believe there are creative solutions. I really think that it's something that we should be doing every single day, thinking creatively, innovatively, looking for collaboration, looking for good fit solutions, and making sure that we're giving something to the next generation, leaving the place better than when we got here.
Definitely. That's awesome.
So
I'm loving it. That's great. That's all good stuff. Speaking of, solutions and all of these issues that we have, and like you said, you're involved in many different, one of the, that you just shared with us is the teeth. Just that small accomplishment. I'm going to kind of ask you for a little bit of a bragging moment right now. I loved hearing that story. What are other small or large accomplishments that you've been involved in or achieved or seen lives changed even in the slightest because of help that you've had in specific organizations?
Well, the biggest one I can think of that happened recently was, and I don't know if you were in the area, but it was when we were having a crisis with state parks and they were going to close the Bidwell Mansion, which is front and center in our town. It's very important. It's an iconic image. And I, along with a small group of people, just basically said that's not acceptable. And we, within a couple of months, raised $140,000. We forced the state to take a look at their operations and how inefficient State Parks was running this particular park as a state historic park. It was a big upset. It was a big deal, and it took lobbying in Sacramento. It took a lot of behind-the-scenes maneuvering, but we won. And it did not close, and then it came out that State Parks had a little slush fund on the side that, it was a big deal. And the reason I'm particularly proud of that is that it was a small group of people that said, this isn't acceptable.
Yeah.
And then they went the extra step to not only raise funds, but raise awareness. And because it was such a loved, iconic place in our community, to imagine it shuttered was just not acceptable. They were going to shutter it and move all of the collection to Sacramento. We may not have seen all of those things that are local things to this area ever again. It could have gone into storage somewhere, So I think that's one, thing. When we were going through the crisis, the economic crisis, I was the head of the Economic Development Corporation at that time, and we did a thing called agricultural speed dating. And what that was that we got 12 large buyers like Sierra Nevada and restaurants, Rayleigh's, and then we dated them with 24 growers.
Okay.
And we did this all within 3 hours. And I got the idea basically from the movie industry, where you go and you pitch a movie idea and you get 2 minutes to pitch your idea, and you're just moving around from producer to producer. And I thought, I wonder if that would work, in the agricultural realm. And we did this. It was so well received. Well, I know that it really makes more sense sometimes to become an expert in one field and really hone your skills. Maybe it was my journalism background. I'm not sure. I was so interested in so many topics, and I covered a lot of different things. But I really feel that I'm kind of a pollinator of ideas, and then I'm good at helping people organize and think through a process to make something happen. Because I couldn't do this on my own.
Yeah.
You have to inspire others to want to be a part of something. So it really takes some inspiration, it takes hard work, and it takes believing that other people can do it. Because you have to make them believe that they can do it.
Yeah.
So that you're not out there doing it all, but you get crews of people to help and build these resources.
Yeah, and believe in that vision. You see it, and I feel like you help other people see it.
Yes.
And like you say, believe in it.
Right.
And that they can do it, and that they can make change. You're just one person, but with the help of everyone else, it can happen. And just from sitting here talking with you, I'm inspired. I want to go out and learn about all of these different organizations and whatnot. But now my question is, what inspires you? What is your driving force? Where does all of this stem from? This pure goodness I feel like that you have for helping others, and this just care that you have for the future generations and the community and different types of organizations.
Well, I think it's rather interesting that we are interviewing today, because it was 14 years ago that my father died on this day. And I get a lot of my inspiration from my father. He was a good man.
That's awesome. Wow. You're fine. But that's just a testament to how good he was, who you are.
Well, he was a fighter. He was a fighter, and his name was Frank, and people would say, "You're too frank, Frank." And I get to be too frank sometimes, too.
Yeah. But that's so amazing that you can almost honor him through the work that you do, and everything that he was lives on through you.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to live on through the people that you inspire. It just keeps going.
That's the hope. And he's the one who said, you should always leave a place better than what you found it. And if you can't do that, you have to question what you are doing. Because if you aren't leaving it better, what's coming after you?
What's the point? What's the purpose, right?
Right. So there's a lot of battles. You can pick them. They can be environmental, they can be human rights, it can be social justice, it can be women's rights, it can be education, it can be arts and culture, it can be gun rights. It's whatever you're interested in, and it's how that interest develops in you that shapes the person that you are. And then I was really super lucky to have incredible parents that fostered the idea that education was the way to make everything okay. I don't know if that's true today. I think that education costs a lot. I think that that we are seeing that. Just a minute. So I really think that one of the things that we're seeing today is that education is not something that every person aspires to. And that there are so many important career choices out there that have been kind of cut off for a lot of people. And a lot of those deal with just working with your hands. So a lot of the career training and education programs are coming back. And I really think that's going to help in the North State, because we have a lot of people that, maybe they want to work for PG&E, and maybe they want to be a lineman. We have a lineman's college, a wonderful one in Oroville. The RN program, that's 3 years. I'd love to see that expanded here. Automotive programs, they just expanded that at Butte College. That's going to become important. So I just think that you have to be passionate about something in life. And whatever that passion is, you really need to follow it. And it takes you places if you really listen and believe in yourself.
And I feel like that just answers the next question that I was about to ask, is that what is the biggest piece of advice that you could give to anyone who is interested in whatever their passion is, whether it's making a change, whether, like you said, could be working for PG&E, working with a nonprofit, working a corporate sales job, whatever passion that they have, or whatever people are trying to achieve, what's your biggest piece of advice? Would it be just find what it is?
Well, I think, like for my own children, they're all on their own paths, and each of them is pursuing their passion, but in between all passions, you still got to eat, you still got to pay your rent, you still have all these things that are just necessary, right? So that's what I did. I worked in a bowling alley my whole going through college. You know, I worked in a bowling alley and worked for newspapers on the side. And I worked in the bowling alley so I could pay my rent and have food and pay my tuition. And, you know, I worked on the newspapers because it fed my passion. So it's that combination, you know. And my youngest daughter just called me and she was like, Mom, I'm thinking I wanna volunteer for something, you know. And I said, well, what's your passion? What do you think? And so she's thinking about that. What does she want to do? But that's a great place to start, is to volunteer, whether you have a love for animals and maybe you want to volunteer at the Humane Society, or you have a love for children and you want to volunteer at a daycare center or even in a school. You just need to volunteer. And I think sometimes we've professionalized our communities so much that there's not enough room for that volunteerism, and yet we need it everywhere. Every organization I know needs volunteers. And volunteering is not glamorous. You know, it might be taking tickets at a door.
Yeah.
It might be pouring beer somewhere. It might be sweeping the floors. But it has a reward, you know.
And just to piggyback off of that, I also feel like if you're volunteering at somewhere you're passionate about, the people that you meet there are going to have common interest.
Correct.
To what you're doing.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, I mean, it also is a networking way to meet people who, you know, are interested in the same thing as you, but how to get more involved with it.
Well, you know, my dad was a volunteer fireman. So he taught his entire life, but his passion was he always wanted to be a fireman.
Yeah.
But he was a diabetic, and so he could never pursue those things. So he became a teacher, but every Wednesday night he was a fireman. And he would go to the fire hall and do whatever those guys did, which I think it involved a lot of poker and, you know, he couldn't drink beer, but, you know, they had a lot of fun. And they would go out and do a lot of rescues. And I remember growing up, you know, we had a plectron in the bedroom and it would go off and Dad would run and jump into his boots. And those were, I know, his favorite times. So he taught to give us a way and a path. But his passion was to be a fireman. So sometimes it works like that.
Yeah. Still doing what you love, but
Yeah.
you know, making sure that bills are paid and
Yep.
food is on the table, but also having that aspect. Well, Debra, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
all of your insight and sharing
Thank you.
so much with us today.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate having you here and getting to learn more about you. And now I feel lifted and inspired just by listening to what you're doing. I definitely appreciate having you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Emerald.
Hopefully I'll be seeing more of you.
I think I'll be seeing more of you.
Good. And be getting involved with, you know, some of the organizations that you're currently have your fingers in and whatnot. So that's it for our show today. Be sure to tune in next time. And hopefully we have some more inspiring, radical guests like Debra.
Thank you.